male athlete, brought fascination and revulsion. Curry's success was always tainted by ridicule.
Nobody knew how to deal with this person who had brought art to sport. It didn't fit into any of their preconceived ideas about sport, and they hated that, and they resented him bitterly.
Curry's sexuality made him a misfit in the sporting world. For him, competitive skating was only ever a means to an end, a way of achieving his dream of blending skating and ballet into a completely new art form. Curry changed the skating world for those who followed him, but his own artistic dreams ended in tragedy. From an early age, Curry's idol was the ballerina Margot Fonteyn. For a boy growing up in the suburbs of Birmingham in the 1950s, ballet was an unusual preoccupation. John's father was an engineer who owned his own factory making parts for cash registers. He had little sympathy for his youngest son's love of music and dance.
He just seemed to be able to dance. He didn't sort of like football or anything like that. And maybe it was a way of expressing himself. And he was all jigging around, putting records on and enjoying himself that way.
When he was only 5 years old, John asked his parents if he could take dance classes.
He wanted to do ballet, and we approached his father.
I remember being taken into the sitting room and my mother saying, can I take John to ballet lessons? And my father getting quite cross and saying, no, absolutely could not. And that was the end of that, and it was never brought up again.
John's father was adamant that no son of his would be a dancer. Skating, on the other hand, was considered a sport, and therefore suitable for a boy, so his father allowed it.
You only had to watch him even when he was practicing, and you knew that he was on his home element and that he was sort of completely happy and relaxed there, happier there than at any other time.
I took him to the ice rink one Saturday morning, but I didn't tell him. He was in a little competition, and he won it. And I think maybe after that he was quite eager to carry on competing, you know.
With this first competition, the boy who wanted to be a ballet dancer entered the world of competitive sport. On the ice, John found that skating could be every bit as expressive as dance, while his father believed he was safely confined in the sporting world. When Curry was 16, his father died unexpectedly. He had only ever seen his son skate twice. His father's death opened the way for Curry to move to London to train at Richmond Ice Rink. If he was going to progress up the competitive ladder, he needed top coaching and full-time training. Curry lived in a bedsit and worked in a supermarket to pay for his tuition. He also began taking the ballet classes that his father had prohibited. Along with his friend and fellow skater Lorna Brown, Curry now began to invent a new hybrid of skating and dance.
We used to talk about what we wanted to do and how we felt. We wanted to skate a lot, and we loved skating, but at the same time it was very much an expression of the self and who you are. John spent a lot of time training with dance, pointing his feet, stretching his legs, using the whole body, the head movements, combined with the arms. He was a physical expression of the music he skated to.
But the skating world had its own hostility to what Curry was trying to do. In the 1970s, it was okay for skaters to be theatrical, kitsch, showy and brash, but for a boy to be balletic just wasn't the done thing.
Ladies were expected to be graceful and have beautiful lines, whereas the guys were just, it was okay if they hit some ugly positions. I mean, a lot of skating people, skating judges, perhaps had never watched ballet dancing to see the lines of the male dancers, which was really the style that John was emulating. They probably thought, well, this is effeminate.
When I stopped looking like a little boy and started to look like a young man, then suddenly all the things that I had done up until then absolutely with everyone's blessing and encouragement, I was told I should stop doing. I was told I shouldn't use my arms, I shouldn't do spirals, I shouldn't try and make everything look so effortless and graceful. I was actually told not to be so graceful. And I couldn't understand why, and it was because they couldn't accept it from a young man, whereas they could from a child.
Curry's determination to stick with his groundbreaking style made him an outsider in the sport, and his clashes with the skating establishment brought out the prickly, difficult side of his character. In the course of his competitive career, he would have 10 different coaches.
John was his own worst critic. John didn't take criticism very well. He didn't like to think that he did anything that anybody could say, no, I don't like that, or you did that wrong, or this has to be made better. He found that very difficult to accept on many occasions. He became very difficult to coach.
But Curry had a grand design which went far beyond the sport of skating, where he would never be allowed to fulfill his thwarted ambitions as a dancer.
When we were both training at Richmond, he told me then that he wanted to have his own company. Eventually, he would love to have his own company of skaters, like a dance company, and work with dance choreographers and be in theaters. And he knew he wouldn't be able to get that and have the backing for it unless he won the major titles.
By 1970, Curry was Britain's top skater.
The men's title goes to John Curry.
But the real prizes were on the international circuit. At the very top level of competition, Curry's performances were crippled by nervousness. Frequently he would crack under pressure and fall doing his triple jumps.
John Curry, the British champion, he's gone straight off. He's walked straight back up the gangway because he knows that that was probably one of his worst performances ever.
Our little old devilish thermometer just shows the temperature is going up a couple. It's now 42 here at the KOA Weather Center.
After 5 years on the international circuit, Curry's competitive career was in crisis. But he refused to give up. Instead, he moved full-time to America, where he got the financial backing and facilities he needed to train for the forthcoming Olympics. He also secured the help of top coaches Carlo and Krista Fassi.
John was known as a skater that was very talented, but could not quite put it together in competition. He many times blew it the last minute. And I saw him the year before he came to us at the European Championships, and he was great in practice, but didn't do it in competition.
Out of this talented but inconsistent skater, the Fassis forged a great competitor. They helped tailor his balletic style to fit the requirements of the international judges.